Hello, and welcome to the Angus and Pete Show. Views and opinions are strictly those of the presenters and their guests and should not be taken as advice. Goodness knows, we're not qualified to advise you about anything. Side effects may include mild amusement and occasional enlightenment with feelings of embarrassment, apathy, disappointment, and pity.
Welcome to episode 20. I'm Angus Pete.
And I'm Pete Brown, and we are the Angus and Pete Show.
The place where you can listen to two guys chatting about this riveting world of customer engagement.
Customer engagement, otherwise known as call centre, contact centre, customer service, customer experience, CX, etc., etc.
And if you want to know more about us, then just check us out on LinkedIn. Pete, what's in our post bag this week?
Couple of items. George from Dubai has been in touch.
Okay.
And George has just started listening to the podcast. He hasn't listened to many episodes, but he says that he particularly liked episode 11, which was the one about why the US is different to EMEA.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I can imagine why that's interesting.
And he asks, how have things changed given recent developments at the White House? Well, thanks for asking, George. Angus, would you like to handle that one?
This could get us into a horde of trouble. Let's just say it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get myself into trouble because I will go off on a total rant on this one.
Yeah, I know that you are a big MAGA man. I know that. So I know that you're a big Trump supporter.
The most interesting one, which I was reading through this evening, was that he has applied tariffs to an island in Antarctica that is only occupied by penguins. And I think that says everything about the level of logic behind some of these tariffs. But I think, yeah, let's leave it at that.
I think what it's also done is demonstrated that stated convictions and the courage to see them through is not always what it's painted to be, particularly when you lose 200 billion off your estate and the arse drops out of your car business. But I guess that's a subject for another day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Get back on topic, Pete.
Yeah, closer to home. Deirdre from Dorking.
Okay.
This eagle-eared listener heard our last episode, which was CX Insider, Dan, talking about service levels. And right at the beginning, I don't know if you remember this, Angus, we mentioned a comment from a pre-sales guru, which basically said, no discovery, no demo. I don't do demos unless I've got information to make sure I'm set up to succeed. And Deirdre said, very simply, I'm a sales specialist. I hear this a lot. I want to know what a good discovery process looks like. Can you help me? And I think we can. In fact, I know we can, Angus, because you're always telling me how important proper discovery is in the CX sales process. And you're also telling me how great you are at it. So I think we should give the listeners the opportunity to listen to your dulcet tones and hear you impart a bit of wisdom about this subject. I'll help when I can, but I think this is your baby.
You've just set me up here. But
as if
it is one of my hobby horses. If you don't understand the problem, stop trying to develop a solution. So I suppose there is some logic to it.
And just so we're clear, this is the discovery process that should be somewhere in the sales process that is all about discovering customer requirements. So you hear it called requirements capture, you hear it called discovery, you hear it called different things, but really it's not a sales process, it's more of a listening process, right?
So you make an interesting point, Pete. Discovery is not just one step in the sales process, it's everywhere in the sales process. And you have to do it multiple times as well. It's not just a one-off thing. You've got to do it all over the place. I've seen them hundreds of times. You've probably seen them exactly the same. Is that technical discovery spreadsheet or questionnaire that scares the hell out of sellers and buyers and partners and customers. It doesn't matter who you are. When a pre-sales engineer puts that in front of you and says, right, here are 60 questions that you need to answer. Let's go.
I've always found that quite amusing because if you remember back to the RFP episodes, one of the bugbears of salespeople, and particularly pre-sales people, is being given a spreadsheet with a big list of questions that you've got to crack through to get to the table in the first place. And then once you've filled in the RFP and you get into project and you start to do your discovery process, the same people that were moaning about that spreadsheet rock up with their own and then get revenge by putting the customer through it, right? I've seen that a lot.
It is. And it's just the information that they're trying to gather is valid. It's about how you gather it and when you gather it. And that's just the wrong mechanism in my book.
Okay.
I think what's really important, if you think about it, is why are you doing discovery? What is the purpose? Somebody that's thinking about a new contact center deployment, what tools can we use? But also making sure that whatever you put in place aligns with the customer's business goals. And I mean, last week we were listening to a lot of discussion around alignment and how the execs work. So you've got to take the business context into this as well.
And just to be clear, I think we've said it, but I just want to make absolutely sure our listeners understand it. Discovery can happen pre-sale, post-sale, like the demos that we spoke about. There are different flavors of it, but ultimately it's, well, I guess the clue's in the title, right? It's looking to discover more about the customer's pain, more about their perceived requirements and what you can do about them.
And it's also helping the customer to discover different ways of thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So I think, one of the key aspects of effective discovery is about how you ask the questions. Don't ask closed questions. Ask thoughtful questions that encourage the buyer to think about their challenges in new ways. Okay. Because quite often you going in as a seller, your technology might be different to what they have today. It does the same thing, but it does it differently.
Okay.
So I think if you're asking thoughtful questions, this is more effective than just making statements or telling them things. Take people on the journey. Simply asking a series of closed questions and leaving that in a techie's hands and say, fill it out with the client is going to get you nothing but best guesses and no thinking behind it.
Okay.
So kind of what you need is a framework. I don't like the word checklist, but think about a checklist of areas that you need to think about, not of specific questions. There are three main things. What's their current situation? What's the today state?
Mm-hmm.
What's not working for them? Because what's the pain point for them? There's going to be something that's not working. But really importantly, what really matters? Because there can be 10 pain points. There are going to be 10 goals. There's going to be a lot of context around the situation, but what is that one thing that really matters that's going to make them buy something or just go, right, that was really interesting. I'll come back to you in a year.
I've been in discovery processes where you've got people that are really on the ball and they're really good at articulating those three things. Other people just really struggle. How can you overcome that? What do you do?
So I would talk to multiple different stakeholders first off. Don't do your discovery with one person because one person might not have the context. So go and talk to multiple people. Each different stakeholder that you talk to is going to have different pain points and they will have a different way of thinking about the issues. So in a good example, if you go and talk to somebody that's really focused on the contact center and they're being measured on some metrics, what metrics are they? How do they relate those to the customer experience? What do they want to improve? Or are they looking to scale it, deal with more customers with the same resources? Go and have that discussion about the pain points. And you're going to have multiple of them. Document them and collate them so that you can see what the themes are.
And the other mistake I've seen sales teams make at this point, and this is probably more relevant pre-sale discovery than it is post-sale, is they just can't help themselves. They frame the questions, they frame the answers, they frame the conversation to funnel the customer in a certain way because ultimately we've got to sell this product at the back end of it. That's a big mistake because this is a part of the qualification process as well, right? Pre-sale.
Yeah, it is. You ask the right questions, you'll discover where you're trying to sell lemons, the other person is trying to buy wheelbarrows. You've got a problem.
That's an interesting comparison. Yes. Anyway,
the other thing, go back to RFPs. We've said it many times. An RFP document is a vision document.
Yeah.
What they ask for and what they deploy ultimately are very different. It's always a subset. So understand absolutely as one of your key themes of discovery is where the buyer wants to go in the future. What are their business and strategic goals? Because that will drive what questions you need to understand their priorities. Are they focusing on cost reduction? Is that a strategic goal? Are they looking to drive revenue? Is customer satisfaction an issue? Or are they in some digital transformation process, and they're
Right,
trying to
okay.
implement various things.
Okay.
And that's really important, because when you're playing that back in your business case, back to the execs for sign-off, if you haven't articulated those things, you're going to have a problem.
Right, okay. So we've looked at their current state. We've looked at the challenges and the motivators to change and motivators to move. How much detail do you go into when you're looking at what the solution is? How does that work?
I think there are a couple of things. One, if you can get to a clear articulation of their goals and understand the magnitude of the change that's required to get there, you've got a good starting point.
Okay.
And then the next one is, what's the path that needs to be followed to achieve those goals?
Mm-hmm.
And this is more buying process. And remember, we've said this before. It's not about the sales process. The buyers are not interested on your selling processes and how you're being measured internally. You need to understand how they buy. So ask those questions so that you can really identify who needs to be involved. Has this been tried before and failed? And what are the potential areas of friction? Now, where are their objections going to come from? Which groups are they going to be? Because at that point in time, you've got quite a good picture of the landscape.
So if we get that right, we've got a high level context for the whole thing. It's important stuff, but it's quite high level. It's speaking to that business case that we did a few episodes ago. How much detail do you go into? We know that the stuff our sellers sell and the stuff our buyers buy is actually quite complicated from a technical perspective, and the processes around it are quite complex. Goodness knows we've got our share of 3-letter acronyms and words that no one understands and la 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 la. You've got to have some attention to detail in this, though, right? You've got to have some way of having those conversations, I guess, without turning it into an uber techie workshop that only IT people can have. So when it comes to specific areas of detail, what do you suggest in the context of our world of CX?
So if you think about it, what we've just covered now is that context framework from a business perspective. That's given you the big envelope. There is certainly in every single process a point where you have to go down to the detail. You're absolutely right. What is the current performance that they've got? Where are those pain points? What are the different customer journeys? Because there are probably loads of them. So you've got to go and ask some specific questions. And please don't go and ask the detailed questions on how the contact center operates to a business stakeholder.
Yeah.
Because they will see the outcome of massaged metrics. Talking about last week's episode.
Yeah.
Go and speak to the people at the coalface. Yeah.
So what sort of people and what sort of questions to start to get the detail?
So I would go into the one thing that you would go to is go to marketing, go to contact center operations, those sorts of people. And I say marketing because they are increasingly becoming very important stakeholders in this, in the whole customer journey, customer experience, because they're interacting.
The proactive outbound stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So marketing is an important stakeholder. So what channels do they currently use? What are the common inquiries? How many interactions are the agents dealing with in a live situation versus self-service? What's the average handle time? All those kind of normal contact center customer interaction questions. It's all this sort of metric stuff and basics. The one that I've seen a lot of salespeople miss in discovery when they are only speaking to a limited group of stakeholders is the topic area around the bums on the seats, the workforce, the agents themselves.
Okay.
How many agents are handling different tasks? What tasks are they handling? What is the turnover in the contact center? What's the churn? How many people are leaving every year? How long does it take to train those agents? That's a question that often gets missed.
Yeah.
How do the agents access the knowledge? What tools have they got on their desktops? So that, where do they get answers from? And how much do they do system surfing? Alt tab between different systems.
So I guess that's the place to ask the questions that Dan alluded to in the last episode. The whole thing around agent well-being and mental health and stress. There was a time when that was not really a technology issue. But now there's actually quite a lot that CX technology platforms can do to really support agent well-being, support a culture of helping people to get the job done and be the best they can. So this is the place to ask those questions too, right? Questions about well-being and sick days and what sort of agent support processes do you have in place and how do they need to be supported by your systems?
Now, if you think about it, we were at Contact Center Expo in London 2 years ago, and it was the first time people started talking about agent well-being. That was 24 months ago.
Yeah.
Not a long time at all. So this is new, and I think people need to, sellers need to think about this consciously. The other thing to think about is where they're talking about self-service, also start asking those questions that start evaluating whether they are ready for AI, what their view of AI in the contact center is. And this will vary depending on where you go. You come into the mature markets, everybody's talking about AI, they're very comfortable about it. You go into countries that are big outsourcing locations where the big BPOs are operating. I'm not sure the BPOs like the concept of AI that much because that's going to reduce the bums on seats that they can bill for.
Right.
And you go to locations where agents are cheaper, they're worried about losing their jobs. So, this is a topic to really think about. How are they using their IVR or chatbots? How do they view these sorts of tools as limitations or potential for automating things?
So in the agent world, then there's the operational stuff, there's attitude towards technology, and then what I call the soft stuff, the HR stuff, the churn, the well-being, whatnot. So that's a really good example of how diverse this discovery process needs to be in order to be optimally effective and to cover your bases. And it's also a good indication of how wide-ranging our CX technology is these days.
Yeah, it goes all over the place. And it was interesting listening to Dan as well. I mean, that was a really good episode. I learned loads out of it. The penny dropped for me on a couple of things. He said, if you want a transformation to succeed, involve all the people in the process.
Yeah.
And this is where you do it. Take people on the journey.
So we've got our context and we've got our picture of the metrics and we've got some idea about the people and the processes around the people. Is this the time we then start to look at customer data, CRM systems integration? Is that appropriate now, or is that for another day?
It's another area, and you know what? These don't happen in sequence. You
Right.
can do these whenever you manage to get to these people, but don't miss these things out before you start designing your solutions or what you think you're going to start selling. So, customer data, CRM, how do the agents access this information? Where is it? How much swivel chair rekeying of information? How much data entry is happening? Where do they go and look for stuff? What do they get given when they get a call or a chat gets passed to them? How much history do they get? This is where you really go and delve into this. When I was doing some consulting work, the best places to get these answers were from the agents, not the senior managers. You want to go and get this information, go and plug in the contact center and watch the agents do it. We spent a couple of days in the contact centers talking to different agents and really watched them. And that then informed all the questions we could go and ask.
Right.
And the other thing early on is talk about data security and compliance. Go and speak to those people and find out what are their thoughts, how do they do it, because that's one of the big objections you're going to have to overcome, especially in Europe, Africa, Middle East. Now we've spoken about this. Compliance is a big thing. So this is where you go and find out about it.
So where there's data and where there's a contact center, there's also always a requirement for reports and analytics and insights and wallboards. Even today, wallboards and even whiteboards. The whole thing about reporting, it's sometimes left to the last minute, right? Literally before the thing goes live. Oh, we need some reports on this. So that, for me, that's a biggie. A guy I used to work with, I've got a lot of respect for. He used to say to me, if you want to build a contact center system, start with the reports. Start your discovery with the management information, because from there, everything flows. You'll know what's important to them from a structural perspective. You'll know what's a problem for them from a content perspective. And it's actually a really good place to start.
I think for a lot of stakeholders in the organizations, it's their safety blanket. It's their, it's the dummy on a string that's round their necks that they're not quite sure why they need it, but they think they need it. And I think especially in this day and age, and still fascinates me a wallboard why they want it.
Well,
But
do you know what? Some of the best discovery that you can do even now, walk through a contact center, you see whiteboards and there's tables on them and numbers on them, and just ask what do they mean? Why has Angus got a gold star next to his name, and why has Pete got a black cross next to his name? What's going on here? What does a good day look like? And it's everywhere. And I guess our job is to make it more accessible and prettier to look at in some respects. But I think one of the things that is everywhere, ubiquitous in contact centers, is the whole reporting and analytics piece. Everything that's done, like almost no other job, is analysed and monitored and recorded and reported.
it's the big difference between formal and informal contact centers.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
I think if you concentrate on this area, it also then gives you a very good pointer to what can you do with AI, because these people will be interested in it. At the same time, I think a lot of reporting managers might be skeptical about AI because they might perceive them being pushed out of jobs, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, AI used correctly is a tool that just saves so much time. It's unbelievable.
It's on that subject of AI. We walked around the London CC Expo last year and the year before, actually, and there were the big organisations with their AI stories, and there were niche boutique players with some very clever stuff, but they were effectively one-trick ponies. They were doing specific things. So when it comes to discovery and AI, what do? Do you view AI as an umbrella that goes across everything and just assume it's going to be there for everyone? Or do you look at it in terms of discrete business cases and discrete requirements and then try and get some critical mass and pull it together? Because AI really is a discovery process in its own right, and it's a little bit different to the standard CX piece, right? It's a little bit more general, it's a little bit more wide ranging, and it certainly goes off into the back office and everywhere else in the business.
This is a bugger of a question.
That's why I asked it, Angus. This is why you get paid the big bucks to answer questions like that.
You need to tell people that pay me that they should start paying the big bucks. I tell you, my take on this one is very simple. When you're going and you're talking about AI, I would deliberately ignore the vendor label.
Okay.
It's not about who they're getting the AI functionality. It's what are they doing with it.
Right.
That's how I would approach it. What are they doing it with? What's the problem that they're trying to solve? And look at that use case or that scenario that they're trying to do and build a picture up from there. Because everybody will be using it pretty much. In 2 years, everybody will be playing with this. They will be using it somewhere. Why are they using it there?
And I guess attitude and culture comes into it as well, because whilst AI can be applied everywhere, it doesn't mean to say that a business or the people in it are going to be comfortable using it everywhere.
I look at myself. It took me a while to start using it, right? You heard about it, you sort of played with it, you didn't really use it. And then you started using it in anger, and you suddenly realize, wow, this is really powerful stuff. This can save me a lot of time. And it's how you take people on that journey, and so that they can realize this is a real benefit. It's not a scary monster that's coming at you.
There's an element of education that it's reasonable to assume that there's not a lot of expertise in the businesses. So, okay. So once you've done the detail piece, we've spoken in previous episodes about the importance of, you call it stakeholder management a lot. Who's actually important to be involved in this? So at the end of the day, they're the people you want to influence to say yes to you, right? From a seller's perspective. They're also the people that you want to buy into the solution to make sure that they're getting best value and they're going to do the right thing for their business. Do you engage them in the discovery process as well?
I would. Who's in that buying group? There's no one buyer in this today. That doesn't happen anymore. So identify who needs to be involved, and there will be loads of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they might not be the ones that sign on the dotted line, but they're the ones that are definitely influencing, and they might veto. The other mistake that I think a lot of people make, and I've heard loads of people, and sales managers actually are really guilty of this as well. They're going, who is your champion?
Yeah.
There's not one champion. You've got to have loads of champions in every single group of stakeholders. And you've got to have those champions in those different groups so that they can highlight where they're getting objections. They can coordinate the messaging back into the business, because they're the people that are going to support the business case. If you can put a business case on one page, you can definitely describe the problem in one paragraph. If you can get that written down so that you've got consensus across your stakeholders going, this is the definition of the problem, it's much easier to look at solving it.
Final question before we go to the takeaways. Do you think the RFP process gets in the way of effective discovery?
I think the discovery should have happened long before the RFP happens. And this is why that starting point, tell me why we should answer this RFP, is such a good step one. So I've been waffling on for 9.5 an hour.
Is it that long? Goodness.
Almost. Summarize this. What are the takeaways, Pete?
So first thing you said was ask thoughtful questions. Sales 101 really. Ask open questions, ask engaging questions. Do not sit there with a spreadsheet ticking boxes, because it's not engaging or thoughtful. So that's the first thing. Having said that, there needs to be some structure and there needs to be some process. So focusing on the buyer's current state and their pain points, why these things are important, ultimately helps you to have a discussion about what better solutions might be. Then there's something about mapping their current journey, not in technical detail, but understanding who they talk to, how they talk to them, what channels they use, why they talk to them, what the outcomes are for good and bad, and maybe a little bit about what metrics they use to measure and monitor that performance. We spoke about defining future goals. Don't want to go into too much detail here. You're not asking the customer to say necessarily, this is what I want, or have you got a solution that can do this? But you need to have an idea where these people are going and maybe how they want to get there.
They're the key bullets that go into your business case, because that's what the execs are going to look for.
A little bit about how they get there, the path to success, explore the steps. Do you want a big bang approach? Are you looking for a phased rollout? You want to know how they analyze operational performance. You want to know how they motivate and manage their people, CRM systems, data integration. And finally, it comes back to the old chestnut. Even at the discovery phase, stakeholder management, engaging with the right people, engaging with different people and multiple people is the key, because no one's got all the answers.
No.
Particularly the CEO, particularly the C-suite. Because as we heard last week, they've got a view and sometimes it's not the view. So I still do actually know a guy who's a police officer, not in his professional capacity. I had a few beers with him. And we were chatting one day and he said, it all sounds like sales is like, being a policeman. Brett, what are you talking about? Now, we use the ABC rule. Do you use the ABC rule? It's like, no. Assume nothing. Believe no one. Check everything.
I think that's really good advice.
Right. How did I do?
I think you hit it bang on.
I was listening.
Always makes a change.
And in that case, we'll be back next time with episode 21.
In the meantime, follow the Angus and Pete show page on LinkedIn for news and notifications. Please message us directly to tell us what you want us to talk about, how we're doing, and please keep that post bag bulging.
The show's available on all of your favourite podcast platforms. So listen, like, subscribe, share, repost, and help us spread the word.
Pete, it's joke of the week time.
Of course it is. A discovery joke.
Yeah, it has to be.
Okay, well, this is the best I can do. The importance of discovery. A waiter looks across his cafe and sees a new customer sit down in the table in the corner. So he wanders over and says, what can I get you? And the customer says, just a regular sandwich, please. So the waiter goes off, brings a sandwich. And the customer says, well, I thought it would have come with avocado. So the waiter apologises, takes the sandwich back, puts some avocado in it, brings it back to the customer. And the customer says, and is this gluten-free bread? The waiter picks up the sandwich, takes it back to the kitchen, replaces the 2 slices of wholemeal bread with 2 lovely slices of gluten-free bread, takes it back to the customer. And the customer then says, actually, can it be a salad? So the waiter picks up the sandwich, strips off the 2 slices of bread, throws them out the window, takes off his apron and storms out the door. And that is why you should do your discovery up front.
It's a really bad joke, but it's a really good illustration, though.
Anyway, on that note, cheers, Angus.
Cheers, Pete.
Thanks for tuning in to the Angus and Pete Show. Remember, it's based on the personal views and opinions of the hosts and their guests. If you're feeling aggrieved or litigious, take a chill pill. There's already enough stress in the world. Don't forget to follow our page on LinkedIn and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform for more episodes. We'll see you next time. Oh, and tell your friends.